You've warned that this is a dangerous time for Iraq. I wonder if we could just start with that. What are the dangers that are facing Iraq?
There are a multiplicity of issues which together makes Iraq in a significant danger. The first is the imbalanced political process, which is not an inclusive political process. And unfortunately, still there is a lot of disenfranchisement. There are still large sections of the people outside the political process. There are still the issues of vendetta and so on. And based on this imbalanced, non-inclusive political process, we have the institutions of the state are not the institutions which are compatible with having a full functional state. The vacuum that have been created and the sectarian issues that have prevailed and the various issues that have been taking place prevented the inception of full-blown institutions that are national, that are professional, especially in the wake of the dismantlement of the various institutions of Iraq, either through direct measures, as in the army and military security and so on, or as in the de-Ba'athification, where many people had to leave because they had to join. Now, on top of that, we are witnessing a major dynamic changes in the region, which is spilling over one way or another into Iraq. And we have already problems of great tensions in the region that are also spilling over into Iraq, such as the problems and the conflict and the tension between Iran and the West and Iran and Israel and so on. All these factors are causing this kind of instability, this kind of problem that Iraq is facing now, the lack of institutions, the imbalanced political process, the sectarianism is coming back to the forefront in this country. So these are, and this is why I say it's quite dangerous.
You presented 3 possible solutions to end this crisis. Are any of them likely?
I would have guessed that this power sharing is the most acceptable solution, especially this was an initiative taken by Mr. Barzani, an Erbil meeting, and followed by successive meetings in Baghdad. Various parameters were agreed upon, signed by the various parties, but unfortunately nothing of what had been signed was implemented. So that's why I think this is the more and most acceptable, because we cannot go to a national conference, all the Iraqi groups, without having a vision what to say and what to discuss. Just to go and sit down and sip coffee and have tea and then kiss each other and end up by having nothing, doing nothing. And the same problem would look us in the face again in a few months' time.
You can't even get together to kiss each other and have tea. What is the likelihood that you'll actually be able to come to an agreement about where to meet?
Well, what we have laid down and what we have discussed with the President and with others, that we need really to dilute the tensions and to find a suitable place where every leaders of the first grade would be able to attend to come, especially leaders such as Mr. Barzani, because he was the initiator of the Erbil agreement. He was the man who put forward this initiative that everybody worked around, and this government came out of these meetings, the current government. And we said that there are other tensions that need to be sorted out. The tensions related to the arrest, the issues against Mr. Hashemi. It needs to be in parallel discussed on a political level as well as judiciary and the judiciary level. Mr. Mutlaq, the Deputy Prime Minister, and the arrest, the widespread arrest of in the constituency of the Iraqiya. Mr. Barzani does not want to come to Baghdad. His view, which I agree with, says that he does not want to attend any more conferences where there are agreements, signed agreements, and nobody respects their signature, as what happened in the Erbil agreement. So without the first layer leaders attending, and such a condition that Iraq is going through can be counterproductive. That's why we laid down the idea of getting somewhere where all leaders, including Mr. Muqtada Sadr, Sayyid Muqtada Sadr, can attend. So people can then make decisions, discuss, have a dialogue, and make decisions as they sit together. But when you have the second layer leaders and third layer, they wouldn't be able to make decision unless they go to their superiors.
Now, the Iraqi ministers and members of parliament are boycotting both parliament and the cabinet, and now the cabinet ministers have had their powers removed. Doesn't that hurt Iraqi as much as it hurts cabinet?
We try to reason with the government, with Mr. Maliki. Boycotting the meetings sometimes politically is an acceptable way of dealing with things. And the parliament and the cabinet, and we had reasons to do so. The reasons are ample, as related to various steps that have been taken by the government, contrary to the spirit of partnership. And the decision was taken before the issue of Mr. Hashemi and Mr. Mutlaq, that we should suspend our presence, our attendance in the Council of Representatives. Then I went away, and then there was the dismissal of Mr. Mutlaq as a Deputy Prime Minister, was prevented from going to the Council of Ministers. So we and the leadership of Iraqi, I wasn't there, but I agreed and supported their decision. They said that the way that the Prime Minister behaved with his deputy, one of his deputies, is unacceptable, and it's a challenge to Iraqi, especially in the wake of the absence of Iraqi members of parliament, because of the atrocities that have been committed, because of the lack of partnership, because of many reasons. They decided to suspend their presence and their attendance to the Council of Ministers, but to continue to run their ministries and to serve the people of Iraq. Frankly, we thought that this would lead to a kind of a dialogue that would prevail and would result in producing bylaws for the Council of Ministers, as the Constitution have called for. But unfortunately, this never happened, and Mr. Maliki was only escalating. And until now, since the formation of the Council of Ministers until now, there is no bylaws.
And when will you end the boycott?
I think we agreed today to form two committees. One to look at the issue of boycott of the Council of Representatives, and one to look at the issues of the Council of Ministers, the boycott and the Council of Ministers. And we hope by Saturday for the leadership to meet with these two committees, where they produce their report based on discussions with the various members of Iraqiya. And Saturday, Sunday, we hopefully will take the decision.
So you are considering ending the boycott then?
Once we see positive steps taken by the government to reduce the tension, to embark on dialogue, and to revert back to the agreement of power sharing, then of course we would reciprocate. And indeed, I mean, you know, our history is very clear. We won the elections, but because of the veto against us from foreign powers, and after 9 months, we decided, for the sake of the Iraqi people, to compromise and to accept that a prime minister from the other bloc, the losing bloc, the second bloc, not the losing, but the second bloc, to take the premiership position. And this is all done for the sake of the Iraqi people and for the sake of Iraq. Then when we saw, but based on partnership, and when we agreed on partnership, nothing was implemented. And we believed that this was because of the Council for Higher Policies that I am to assume. So I then decided that we leave this and I get out of this. And I reject this position. So I did so, again, for the sake of Iraq and for the Iraqis. And yet we expected the state of law to reciprocate and to do something to implement the rest of the agreements of the power sharing, which were 9 agreements. One of them is the National Council, including the portfolio of the defense, security, including the issue of the bylaws in the Council of Ministers, including the activation of the political reforms that was agreed by the ex-parliament, the formation of the federal court, which is a constitutional issue, and so on. And nothing of that was implemented. Then the Iraqiya constituencies have been targeted, arrests, widespread arrests, torture, intimidation, expulsions. And then this moved into targeting the leaders of Iraqiya, accusing them in the media of doing wrong things. And this is unheard of in judiciary channels, that people are exposed on TV and media and so on. And we saw no movement along the lines of implementing the power sharing. And then these intimidations started, and now we agreed to attend this national conference to find a way out of the mess that Iraq is in. For all this we have done for the sake of Iraq and for the sake of Iraqis, and all these compromises to make sure that this government will function, that the country will recover, and that the country will be able to face its own destiny without the Americans, without foreign powers inside Iraq. But unfortunately, this is where we are now.
Do you agree with the Deputy Prime Minister's characterization of Prime Minister al-Maliki as a dictator?
There are indeed actions that ultimately, if persist, will create a dictatorship in any country. As when the government is run on a solo will of one person, without due care for the rest of the views of the partners. And we have in history lessons to that effect, including lessons from Iraq. So really, this would lead the continuation of this attitude. In democracy, you don't have, not even in democracy, in any country, you don't have one man who is a prime minister, commander-in-chief of the armed forces, minister of defense, minister of interior, head of intelligence, head of national security, head of the anti-terrorist groups. There's nothing of that nature, except here in this country. Every democracy, every nation has a constitution and must respect its constitution. Although you may have, I have reservations on the constitution, but it's the only guidelines that we have. So we have to implement the articles of the constitution. When we say a council of ministers having bylaws in the constitution, then we must have bylaws for the council of ministers. If the council of ministers is run by one individual who happens to be the prime minister or the head of the council of ministers, then this again would lead to individualistic approach in the country. So those are the reasons that we believe, and there are other reasons, of course. There is no time to mention them all now. But this leads to a one-man rule in Iraq, and a one-man rule in Iraq without checks and balances would result in the normal results of having a kind of dictatorship. I wouldn't call him a dictator now, but if this continues to be the case, then definitely we'll get to there.
How much does the U.S., if any, have a role to play in this political paralysis right now, do you think?
The problem is our friends in the United States have had blurred vision since the very invasion of Iraq. And they did not have a post-conflict policy, how to deal with the problems in Iraq. Hence the laws that have been produced by the occupation of dismantlement of the institutions, of the de-Ba'athification, haphazard politicized de-Ba'athification process, and putting Iraq on a sectarian route, and not knowing what to do. And this continued until now, after the United States have physically left, army-wise, the country. But of course, the goodwill and the friendship and so on is still there, and the strategic framework is still there. So now the United States, the administration, is not clear what to do with for example, our friends, the Americans, they say this National Council is very important to get this conference going, which is, yes, correct, true. But also we need to prescribe what is the aim of this conference and what is to be discussed in this conference and what do we want to achieve in this conference. And what kind of pressure should be applied and persuasion and using their goodwill to ensure that whatever is agreed will be discussed. For now, again, the United States is pushing towards this conference, national conference that the president called for. It was supported almost by everybody, but not knowing what to discuss in this conference. That's why I don't know what really are the policies of the United States. We believe very strongly that we must have relations with the international community, whether it's Europe, whether European Union, whether it's the United States, the Russian Federation. We are part of this world. We are not something out of this world. And we need this, and the United States especially have a political as well as moral responsibility to help Iraq is getting out of this bottleneck.
When you talk to a lot of Iraqis in the streets, I mean, they don't care really about the inside politics of this. They just want you all to get together and do something.
No, yes.
So one of the things you've called for has been new elections. If elections were held again, do you think you would do as well as you did last
Maybe
time?
I don't even put my name for elections. It's possible. But at least let the Iraqi people have their say. Let the Iraqi people say that all politicians are null and void and are not suitable to run the country. the current politicians. Let the people of Iraq decide who they want, but in a free way, in a free system where they can, without any interferences from regional powers, no interferences from international community, and let the election be transparent and free, and let the Iraqi people decide. Maybe many people would not put themselves for re-election. Maybe new faces will come. Maybe something realistic will come out of a new election. But not to have a solution for a stagnant and a failed state and a stagnant situation can be extremely dangerous, given the fact that whatever is around us is boiling. It's not only Iraq. You look around and you see what is happening, the dynamics, how the dynamics are taking place. That's why I believe very strongly that that one of the options out, not the only option, but one of the options out, is to have an early elections, transparent, where the people of Iraq could decide again that Maliki has failed, Allawi has failed, Talabani has failed, everybody has failed. Let us go for a new set of leaders. Why not? Let's face it, I mean, I fought Saddam for 30 years. And when we fought Saddam, we said that we have to have democracy, we have to have the Iraqi people deciding who they want to lead them through the ballot boxes, through transparent elections, and we have to have the rule of law prevailing, combined with the basic rights of the people. So this is what we believe in. This is what we have promised the Iraqi people over 30 years of dead fighting with Saddam Hussein. And now we can't fulfill our promise. So that's why I think one of the ways out really is to have, to have a new elections. If not, we can't get to an agreement on the power sharing, and we cannot get an agreement how we should run this country to benefit the people. Then the people have the right to expel us and to pick others to run the country. So that's why I think the election is.
When you talk to a lot of Iraqis in the streets, I mean, they don't care really about the inside politics of this. They just want you all to get together and do something. Yes. So one of the things you've called for has been new elections. If elections were held again, do you think you would do as well as you did last time?
Maybe I don't even put my name for elections. It's possible. But at least let the Iraqi people have their say. Let the Iraqi people say that all politicians are null and void and are not suitable to run the country. The current politicians. Let the people of Iraq decide who they want, but in a free way, in a free system where they can, without any interferences from regional powers, no interferences from international community, and let the election be transparent and free, and let the Iraqi people decide. Maybe many people would not put themselves for re-election. Maybe new faces will come. Maybe something realistic will come out of a new election. But not to have a solution for a stagnant and a failed state and a stagnant situation can be extremely dangerous, given the fact that whatever is around us is boiling. It's not only Iraq. You look around and you see what is happening, the dynamics, how the dynamics are taking place. That's why I believe very strongly that that one of the options out, not the only option, but one of the options out, is to have an early elections, transparent, where the people of Iraq could decide again that Maliki has failed, Allawi has failed, Talabani has failed, everybody has failed. Let us go for a new set of leaders. Why not? Let's face it, I mean, I fought Saddam for 30 years. And when we fought Saddam, we said that we have to have democracy, we have to have the Iraqi people deciding who they want to lead them through the ballot boxes, through transparent elections, and we have to have the rule of law prevailing, combined with the basic rights of the people. So this is what we believe in. This is what we have promised the Iraqi people over 30 years of dead fighting with Saddam Hussein. And now we can't fulfill our promise. So that's why I think one of the ways out really is to have, to have a new elections. If not, we can't get to an agreement on the power sharing, and we cannot get an agreement how we should run this country to benefit the people. Then the people have the right to expel us and to pick others to run the country. So that's why I think the election can be one of the solutions for this country.
But are you worried about rising sectarianism, and are these political problems we're seeing right now, are they based on sectarianism?
The arrests against various people in the constituencies of Iraqiya, both Shias and Sunnis, was very large. If you recall, to change governorates into regions is something catered for in the constitution. And once some people and various governorates wanted to move from a governorate towards a constitution, towards a region, they were harassed by the government, as has happened in Diyala province, if you recall, or you and this followed a wave of arrests, including getting arrest warrants against the members of the Governorate Council of Diyala and some in Anbar. And they fled. They left their place and they fled. They went elsewhere. And then came the issue of Mr. Hashemi and Mr. Mutlaq. And when we boycotted the parliament, Mr. Hashemi and Mutlaq, there was no case against them. We made this decision before the case which was made through the media against Mr. Hashemi and Mr. Mutlaq. Sectarianism started to rise again, and this was exacerbated by the fact that both the Vice President and the Deputy Prime Minister were targeted. We probably would not have expressed any concerns if the issue of Mr. Hashemi was dealt with in a political route and also in a judiciary way. But we are not familiar, except during Saddam's time, that the media, through the media, people level accusation of that nature, of that magnitude, against a person who happens to be Vice President. And I don't think anybody who has sanity can accept accusations of that level to be done through the media rather than the normal channels of the judiciary. So that's why the whole case, the whole issue is messed up. And that's why people are smelling a sectarian vendetta, because both Hashemi and Mutlaq have been targeted. In Mutlaq's case, he had been accused, funny enough, that he financed demonstrations against Mr. Maliki when Mr. Maliki went to visit the United States recently. And this is the official accusation for Mr. Mutlaq. So frankly, you don't go doing this business with leaders in the country. Mr. Hashemi may have done something and may not. But to know exactly, things should not go, you know yourself, and courts in the West, where there is a rule of law, in any country where there is a rule of law, they don't allow the media to convey and to show and to talk about these issues. So the jurors and the judges are not influenced by the media. So that's why we did not want this to appear in the media, but rather through the normal channels as any judiciary process takes place. And likewise with Mr. Mutlaq, but the sectarianism is not because of those two persons only. This is an addition to what has been happening. And the reason, if you recall and recollect, the provinces of Diyala and Anbar and Mosul and provinces in the south were totally, some provinces in the south were totally against transferring themselves into regions. But because of the marginalization and because of the atrocities and because of the lack of funding to these governorates, you know, in Salah ad-Din province, thousands of people were deba'thified and expelled from their jobs. So as a reaction, they started calling for a region, that Salah ad-Din should be transformed and become a region. So this was a reaction to the central government attitude towards them. That's why I think that sectarianism started to put its head up again in the country. And also it is worth saying that those provinces who called for to change into a region are also provinces in the south of the country. Basra, the Qar Nasiriyya, Diwaniyya, including Basra, which, you know, Basra is controlled by the state of law. Babylon, they said that they want to change and shift into becoming a region.
And I just finally want to ask you about security. It does seem to be getting more dangerous here, more attacks in all sorts of places, perhaps a resurgence of al-Qaeda. Yes. Do you believe security has worsened? It's
very clear that it's worsening, it has worsened, it's worsening. I think all in all, the overall environment is an incubator, a good incubator for terrorists to thrive. And terrorism thrive in such atmosphere whereby there is sectarianism, there is lack of governance, and there are splits within the community, and there is poverty, lack of services, and a vacuum, political vacuum. This is, I think, the right atmosphere, unfortunately, for terrorists to strike as much and as hard as they can. And this is what we are seeing now in Iraq.
And where are the attacks coming from, do you think?
Qaeda. It's al-Qaeda. I was talking to some ambassadors. They believe, like us, these attacks have the very clear fingerprints of al-Qaeda. And also many ambassadors, countries have this information. Also that their assessment, their knowledge, their information is that al-Qaeda have been attacking people and committing terrorist activities in the country.
Were they waiting for the Americans to leave? Has that made a difference?
Definitely, they have been. There have been sleeping cells. They have been in waiting. Definitely, they have been, if you like, gathering their potentials, exploiting the environment, using whatever lack in security, whatever they can do. And then once the Americans left, they started, even before the Americans left. In fact, there was an escalation before the Americans left. As the Americans were drawing down, we witnessed an increase in the incidents, which then was using silencers, small bombs. Now it's getting larger. It's getting bigger, it's getting larger, it's getting, unfortunately, many innocent Iraqi lives are being lost. It's getting too messy. Many innocent people are losing their lives.